I started working the night shift at Ridgeway Distribution Center a few months ago, a sprawling warehouse complex on the edge of town that seemed to breathe in silence after midnight. The company was desperate for guards willing to stay from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and I needed the money badly enough not to ask questions. The first night, I was struck by how huge and empty the place felt. My footsteps echoed across the polished concrete floor, the sound bouncing off the endless aisles of stacked boxes. The fluorescent lights hummed in a way that almost resembled whispers, and every now and then, I'd hear a soft metallic groan, like the building itself was stretching in its sleep. The control room sat at the center of the property, surrounded by a dozen black and white monitors showing live footage from every corner. My supervisor, Harold, gave me a quick rundown before leaving, just the basics. Check the cameras, patrol every 2 hours, and don't leave the main gate unlocked. He didn't say much else. Before he left, though, I noticed a strange look on his face when he said, "If you hear anything from Storage Bay 4, just ignore it." He laughed afterward, but it didn't feel like a joke. The first patrol went smoothly enough. The cold air outside bit through my jacket as I walked the perimeter, flashlight cutting through the darkness like a blade. There was nothing but wind and the far-off sound of trucks on the highway. Still, something about the western section of the warehouse made me uneasy. Every time I passed Bay 4, I felt watched. The door to it was chained shut, but the metal rattled faintly as if something inside was moving. I told myself it was just the wind. When I got back to the control room, one of the monitors had gone static, the one pointed right at Bay 4. I tapped the screen, adjusted the knob, and the image flickered back into view for just a second. In that second, I swear I saw movement. A faint human shape standing in the dark, perfectly still, facing the camera. Then the feed went black again. My heart pounded, but I told myself it was just a glitch. That's what I had to believe. By 3 a.m., exhaustion hit me hard. I sat back in my chair, the soft hum of the monitors lulling me into half-consciousness. Somewhere between awake and asleep, I heard it again, a metallic scrape echoing down the hall. It was coming from Bay 4. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself it was the building settling. But the noise came again, longer this time, deliberate. I grabbed my flashlight and radio, heart pounding as I made my way toward the western corridor. The sound grew louder with each step, a dragging noise that set my teeth on edge. When I reached the heavy steel door of Bay 4, the padlock was trembling, the chain rattling as if something inside was trying to get out. My radio crackled suddenly. I froze, listening. "You're not supposed to go there," a voice whispered through the static. It wasn't Harold. It wasn't anyone I knew. The voice sounded warped, metallic, almost inhuman. I dropped the radio, the sound cutting off as it hit the floor. My flashlight flickered, and in the weak beam of light, I saw a movement under the door, shadowy shapes sliding back and forth. I stumbled backward and ran all the way back to the control room, locking the door behind me. When I checked the cameras again, the feed for Bay 4 was still black. Every other section of the warehouse looked empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was moving just outside the frame, waiting. I sat there, gripping my flashlight like a weapon, trying to calm down. When dawn finally came, Harold returned and asked how my shift went. I wanted to tell him everything, but the look on his face stopped me. He already knew. He nodded slightly when he saw I was shaken and just said, "You'll get used to it." That was the moment I realized whatever haunted Bay 4 wasn't new. It had been there long before me. That day, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that dark silhouette from the camera and heard the metallic scrape again. I almost didn't go back the next night, but something in me wanted to understand what was really happening. On my second shift, I arrived early and checked every lock, every camera connection, every corner of the building. Everything was in place. Still, the air felt heavier, like the building was aware of me now. I made sure Bay 4's chain was tight and the lock intact before settling into the control room. Midnight came and went without incident, but around 2:13 a.m., every single camera feed flickered at once. The IT lasted maybe 3 seconds, but that was long enough. When the feeds returned, something had changed. The boxes in Bay 2 were rearranged. A chair that had been near the break room was now in the center of the hallway. And in one camera, just for an instant, I saw a figure standing behind me, in the control room. I turned so fast I nearly fell, but there was no one there. My pulse raced. I checked the back door. Locked. The air was freezing cold, my breath visible under the fluorescent lights. I turned back to the monitors, and the chair in the hallway was gone again. The warehouse looked exactly as it had before, like nothing had happened, like the cameras were playing tricks on me. Around 4 a.m., a light in Bay 4 turned on by itself. It wasn't supposed to be powered. I stared at the glowing square on the monitor, then noticed something else, the silhouette of someone walking slowly across the bay floor. I leaned closer, but before I could make sense of it, the feed cut to static again. That morning, I asked Harold about the cameras, but he avoided my eyes. Power surges, he said. Old wiring. But when I asked who used to work in Bay 4, his expression changed completely. No one, he said flatly. No one for a long time. On the third night, I wasn't alone. A new guard named Luis was assigned to join me. He was talkative, a welcome distraction. I didn't mention anything about Bay 4 at first. I just wanted someone else there in case the night went wrong again. Around midnight, we split up to do separate patrols. Luis took the eastern side, and I reluctantly headed toward the west. Halfway through the patrol, my radio buzzed. Hey, did you lock Bay 4? Luis asked. My stomach dropped. Yeah, I said. Why? He hesitated before answering. Because it's open. I ran. When I turned the corner, the door to Bay 4 hung open, the chain and lock lying on the floor. The inside was pitch black, and a cold draft poured out from it. We stood there, flashlights shaking, neither of us wanting to go in. But curiosity overruled fear. The moment we stepped inside, the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. The walls were covered in old stains, dark, rust-like smears. In the far corner, there was a pile of old uniforms, shredded and blackened. The air smelled faintly of something metallic and rotten. Luis found a maintenance folder near the door, thick with dust. Inside were old logs dating back to the 1980s, notes about shipments, structural issues, and security incidents. The last entry read, "Do not open Bay 4 after Incident 44B. Containment incomplete." Before we could process what that meant, the lights above us flickered, and something moved in the dark behind the shelves that we ran out of Bay 4 without looking back, slamming the door shut and looping the chain twice. But for the rest of the night, every time I glanced at the monitor, the door appeared slightly ajar again, as if something inside was waiting to come out. By the fifth night, Sarah no longer trusted silence. It had become a lie the house told before it spoke again. She barely ate, barely slept, moving through the rooms like a trespasser in her own bloodline. The whispers had grown familiar, so many voices blending into one soft, endless chant that seemed to live beneath her skin. Sometimes they called her name. Other times, they recited fragments of her uncle's words or older phrases in languages she couldn't place. But one sentence kept repeating over and over. "The house remembers through you." Driven by a strange compulsion, Sarah returned to the cellar. The air was colder now, carrying the faint smell of iron and earth. The heavy wooden door was still sealed, but when she placed her palm against it, she could feel a slow, rhythmic vibration pulsing through the wood, like a heartbeat. "You're awake," she whispered, though she didn't know why. The response was immediate. A soft knock came from the other side, followed by a whisper that seemed to echo directly inside her skull. "Not yet, but you will let me." Shaken, she stumbled back upstairs. In the kitchen, she spread the letters and photographs across the table again, searching for meaning. There were symbols carved into the cellar door, symbols also hidden in the photographs, marks painted on walls, carved into floors, even stitched into the hems of clothing worn by those in the old film. She realized they weren't decorative, they were seals. A containment ritual. Each generation had renewed them to keep something trapped beneath the house. And her uncle, he must have failed. Among the letters, she found one more recent than the others, written in her uncle's trembling hand but never sent. It read, "Sarah, if you're reading this, it means the house chose you. It calls to our blood, to memory itself. It does not feed on fear, it feeds on recollection. The more you remember, the stronger it becomes. Forget it, and it fades. But forgetting means losing everything, even yourself. I tried to forget, but it followed me in the silence. Do not listen. Do not name it." But she already had. Deep inside her thoughts, she had named the whisper. Not in words she could write down, but in a feeling, something ancient and patient that now breathed in rhythm with her own heartbeat. That night, she woke to find the cellar door wide open. Cold air poured into the hallway, and the whispers were no longer confined below. They filled every room now, circling her like an invisible tide. The iron key lay on her nightstand, pulsing faintly with heat, as if responding to the sound. She picked it up and, for a moment, felt an overwhelming calm, like the eye of a storm. The voice that came next was no longer many, but one. "You've already unlocked it, Sarah. You just haven't looked inside." When I returned, Harold was gone. The new supervisor, a man named Evans, greeted me stiffly. He didn't seem to know, or didn't care, about what happened before. I asked about the missing guard, Luis, but Evans said there was no record of anyone by that name. That sent a chill down my spine. I remembered his voice, his face, everything. How could he not exist in the records? That night, I went searching through the storage room behind the control center, looking for old security tapes. Most were blank or corrupted, but one, labeled Incident 44B, caught my eye. The date on it was from 1987. The footage was grainy, black and white, showing Bay 4. A group of workers stood around something large covered by a tarp. They lifted it, and the tape cut to static. When the image returned, the workers were gone. Only one camera remained pointed at the bay. The tarp was gone too. But something else stood there now. A shape, tall and motionless, its head tilted toward the camera. Then the screen went black. The tape ejected itself automatically, as if rejecting being played. That was when I realized the figure from the old tape was the same one I'd seen in my live feed. That night, I didn't patrol. I just sat there, watching the cameras, waiting. At 3:07 a.m., Bay 4's light turned on again. The light in Bay 4 stayed on for the rest of the night, even after I cut power to the entire western grid. I called maintenance. No answer. I tried calling Evans. Nothing. So I waited, watching the feed. At 3:32, the static cleared, and someone was there again. But this time, it wasn't the tall shadow. It was a man, wearing an old security uniform, faded and torn. He looked directly at the camera. His name tag was just barely visible. L. Ortega. Luis. I froze. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stared, eyes hollow and dark. I ran to Bay 4, heart slamming in my chest, desperate to prove it wasn't real. But when I got there, the door was sealed shut again. The chain rusted over as if it hadn't been touched in years. The air felt thick, suffocating. Back in the control room, the feed was normal again. No Luis. No light. Just darkness. I checked the personnel files again, still no record. It was as if he'd never been hired. That's when I realized what Harold meant when he said, "You'll get used to it." I didn't leave the control room for the rest of that week. I barely slept during the day. But every night, I kept coming back, drawn to the cameras, to that one black screen showing Bay 4. Something about it called to me. Then, one night, the voice on the radio came again. This time it said my name. Hearing my name through that static was worse than seeing any figure. It came in a distorted whisper, stretched and hollow. "Daniel." My name echoed through the speaker like it was being dragged across metal. I threw the radio down, but the voice didn't stop. It filled the room, seeping from every corner. I could hear it from the vents, from the monitors, from the floor itself. Then, one by one, the cameras began to shut off. Each feed went dark until only Bay 4 remained. The chain on the door rattled violently on the screen, and then, snap, it broke. I heard the sound echo in real life, somewhere in the distance. I ran for the exit, but every hallway seemed to twist on itself. No matter which direction I turned, I found myself back at the same corridor leading toward Bay 4. I don't remember choosing to open the door. I just remember the sound, the slow creak of metal and the rush of cold air. Inside, everything was different. The shells were gone. The walls looked wrong, like they were made of concrete that was breathing. In the center of the room stood that same tall shadow, motionless. It raised one arm slowly, pointing directly at me. Then I blacked out. I woke up in the control room at dawn, the monitors looping footage of empty hallways. My radio was missing. The only thing on the desk was a note written in my handwriting. Containment incomplete. I tried to quit again, but Evans told me there was no record of my resignation. In fact, according to company files, I'd been working there for over a decade. My start date was listed as 2015, 10 years ago. I felt sick. My badge was different too. Older, scratched. My face in the photo looked wrong, distant, as if taken long ago. That I went back to Bay for one final time, determined to see for myself. The padlock was back in place, the chain new again. But the faint scraping sound came from inside, steady, rhythmic. I called out, no answer. Then I whispered, Luis. The sound stopped instantly. When I returned to the control room, there was a new tape on the desk, unlabeled. I played it. It showed me, patrolling the warehouse, talking on the radio, staring at the monitors. But at the end, it shifted. It showed Bay 4's door open, and I walked inside. Then static. Then the same tall shadow emerged from the darkness, dragging something behind it. It was wearing my uniform. That I don't remember turning off the tape. I just remember sitting there for hours, staring at the blank screen, unable to breathe. I realized there was no entity in Bay 4. Bay 4 was the entity, and it had already taken me. Now I'm back at the control desk every night. Evans is gone. The warehouse feels quieter than ever. The monitors flicker between darkness and static, and sometimes I see workers I don't recognize walking the halls, faces blank, movements stiff. I think they used to be guards. Maybe they still are, in some way. That I don't sleep anymore. I don't leave. I just watch the screens. Sometimes, the cameras show other guards arriving for their first shift, looking nervous, holding their flashlights tight. I want to warn them, to tell them to run, but I can't. The moment I try, the radio's cut out, and the building hums louder. Last night, I saw something new. On camera 12, the control room feed, there was another me sitting in my chair, but he looked older, worn out, eyes hollow. He turned to face the camera and smiled. I felt something inside me shift, like the building itself was breathing me in. My reflection in the monitor didn't move when I did. If you ever get offered a job at Ridgeway Distribution, don't take it. The pay isn't worth it. You won't quit. You won't leave, because once you see what's in Bay 4, it sees you too, and it never lets you go.